All right, I will say good morning, a good chodesh, a welcome to everyone. Very exciting, very exciting. We'll say first of all, I want to begin by thanking our sponsors. This is really incredibly exciting. We have Baruch Hashem 4 Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Nisan, which is quite amazing. To thank Steve and Terry Zinn for dedicating all the Shir Midrashos this month in gratitude to Hashem and welcoming their first grandchild, Adin Tzvi Hochbaum, son of Anna Yoni Hochbaum in New York City. We thank Benjamin Wall from Eretz Yisrael for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drashos this month. This is truly beautiful. Listen to this dedication. From all that do not have the opportunity to bask in the radiance of the Beis Midrash, but are nevertheless blessed by the self-sacrifice of Moishe Abramson and Jeremy Lasson, who enable them to silently nod their head in awe as they listen to the beautiful words of Gemara. May Hashem, in His wisdom, reward those volunteers in measure for the Torah they allow them to obtain. Quite beautiful. Quite beautiful. We thank our Talmud Torah sponsors, Shimmy Batsheva Messing, for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drushos this month in honor of the Bas Mitzva of their daughter Lilah. To thank Paul and Kathy Pollack, second month in a row, Baruch Hashem, for dedicating all the Shiurim and Drushos this month in memory of Paul's father, Shmuel ben Zechariah, his mother Leah bas Avrohom, great-grandmother Tziril bas Rav Dov, all of whom have yahrzeits in the month of Nisan. We also thank our Daf Yomi sponsors, Moishe and Abramson, for dedicating all of Arvei Pesachim as a zechus for refuah shlema for Daniel Meir Ben Chana. We thank Menachem and Susie Schoenfeld for dedicating today's daf in honor of the 22nd anniversary of their engagement. Mazel tov. Mazel tov. I never asked them Shonim Tovos, and also the Schoenfelds dedicate the Daf Yomi in honor of the return of Dr. Jack Gladstein to Daf Yomi. Return in person, not return to Daf Yomi. Dr. Gladstein has been with us, Baruch Hashem, the entire time. Jack, welcome back. Wonderful to have you back, Baruch Hashem. All right, so we'll say with that, let us begin. I'm going to have to stop doing Tzidkas Atzadik in the morning for the sponsorships. Baruch Hashem. It's beautiful. It really happens to be. It's quite overwhelming. Baruch Hashem. All right, so with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Kuf Yud Gimel 113. Hopefully those of you who were here at Shir yesterday did your homework, because I gave you a little bit of homework on the WhatsApp chat. To give you homework. We're starting on the top of Kuf Yud Gimel, top of 113. Got to read your messages, right? So on the top of 113, it's good. You'll go over it. I just realized there's no way we're going to get through the daf if we don't give a little bit of homework. So we'll say with that, let us begin. Second line from the top, Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Amar li Rav Ravasi. So we'll say more beautiful Gemara. Rav said to Ravasi, Lo sidar b'masa de lo tzanef be'sosya v'lo navach be'kavod. Do not live in a city where they don't have horses and don't have dogs. Literally, it means don't live in a city where the horse doesn't bray and the dog doesn't bark. So we'll say, what's the pshat? So the Rashbam points out there's a very simple idea that the dogs and horses alert the inhabitants of the city to the presence of robbers, the presence of thieves. So if you live in a place where there's no horses, there's no dogs, ultimately, again, the robbers could get in and out. Now, the Rashbam actually is mechalik between dogs and horses. He says the chap of the dogs is that the dogs will bark when there's a thief who comes. The horses are there so that after you realize that there's been a thief there, you could pursue the thieves. Masha'inkein, if there are no horses in the city, the thieves could get in and out quickly. This is incredible. Va'atadar bi'ir deresh masa asya. Do not live in a city where the head of the city is a doctor. Now, this is very interesting. What's the pshat with this? So if we'll say here, it's always interesting to see on the different dapim where the Rashbam is. So here on the Rashbam is on the bottom. There is nothing significant. I just want to point out. I'm sure there's a metaphorical reason, but none that I could discover. This is just a printing issue, the typeset. So we'll say, if you look at the Rashbam, is on the bottom. So we'll say, this is the same idea as to why the Gemara said yesterday that you shouldn't have Talmidei Chachamim run a city also. There are certain occupations and certain professions which are all consuming. So you don't want a doctor being the head of the city because the doctor is busy with his patients, and a doctor often has to drop everything for emergencies. So therefore, don't live in a city where the head of the city is a doctor because things will get neglected. So the Gemara goes, Vaiter v'lo tansiv tarti. Do not marry 2 women. Self-explanatory, right? Ina sabta tarti, and if you go ahead and you marry 2 women, this is very interesting. I will say, interestingly enough, the reason, in all seriousness, the reason the Gemara says, don't marry two women is there's a concern that they're going to conspire against you, says the Rashbam. The Rebbe say, now understand, all kidding aside, every single time the Torah tells us a story of where a man married more than one wife, it never goes well, right? Whether it's Avram and Hagar and Sarah, whether it's Yaakov and Rachel and Leah, again, these marriages just don't go well. Understandably so. The dynamic lends itself to a certain amount of, we'll call it familial toxicity. So the Gemara says, don't marry two women. This is very interesting, Eitzah. V'nasav tetarti, and if you're already married two, marry a third. Nasiv tlas. So I'll say, so the Rashbam says, why should you marry a third? So this is interesting. The Rashbam says, because out of three, we will assume that one will be on your side. This way, again, if two conspire against you, the third will be there to tell you what's going on. Amrli Rav Kahana, Hafuch benevelto, v'lo teifuch b'minah. Both say so profound. Rav said to Rav Kahana, better to literally turn over an avela carcass of an animal, but don't turn over your words. So I will say, this is a profound idea. What Rav is saying to Rav Kahana is be a person who stands behind your word. In other words, better to have an occupation of turning over animal carcasses than to be the kind of person who turns over their word. Someone who turns over their word says one thing but doesn't carry through, or says one thing but then fundamentally undermines. Be a person, when you say something, that your word stands. Pashut nevelta b'shuka v'shakol agra. Better to skin a carcass in the marketplace and make an honest day's living. Veloteman, don't say kahana ana, v'gavra rabba ana, v'sanya be milsa. Both say, essentially what the Gemara says over something so profound. There is nothing wrong with an honest living. And an honest living, even if it's not the most glorious living, never say anything is beneath you. Kahana ana means, see, you would think it means a Kohen, but it means someone like, I'm like Rav Kahana, right? I'm a big Talmud Chacham. I'm so important. This is beneath you. And we'll say, it's such an incredible yesod that it's really two ideas. Number one, this goes back to Rabbi Akiva's idea in yesterday's daf of Asay Shabbos Chachol V'Hatistarich Librios. They need to be independent and they need to be self-sufficient. And sometimes the only way to be self-sufficient is to take on things that are not so glorious. But there's nothing inglorious about earning an honest wage. There's nothing inglorious. Even if the work is not so chashiv, if you earn an honest living, it's not beneath you. Rabbi said this is also an incredible yesod in general in life, certainly with taking on matters of community as well. You know, and being able to help out the tzibur, being able to help out Tehillah, being able to help out the community, a person should never feel that anything is beneath them. Whether it's an honest wage or whether it's tzarchei tzibur, everything is important. The Gemara goes like to Salakta le'igra, if you go up to the roof, sheruseich b'hadoch. Take your meal with you. So I'll say this is also very interesting. Essentially, this is a good Jewish saying, right? Wherever you go, take food. Wherever you go, take food. We'll say what this means is the image of going to your roof is a very short trip. So what the Gemara is trying to convey is, even if you're going on a very short trip, take your food with you. So we'll say this is part of the same motif of being a self-sufficient individual. That don't get yourself into a situation where you have to rely on others. So even if you're taking a short trip from your home to the roof, take your food with you. The Gemara goes weiter. Kari b'masa bezuza tusi knafech nehavu. Literally, if gourds are very inexpensive in your city, go ahead and make sure you always have a couple underneath the corner of your garment. Same idea. That ultimately, again, make sure you have food with you so that you are independent and self-sufficient. Amar le Rav Lichia Berei. Both said, this is incredible. Rav said to Chia, his son, Lo tishte sama. Rabbi said, Lo tishte sama literally means don't take drugs. He told his son, don't take drugs. Rabbi said, take a look at the Rashman for just a moment. It's 2, 4, 5 lines in. Lo tishte sama literally means don't drink drugs. Al tishte samim mipnei shenikva lahem vesas. So listen to this. This is incredible. Rav said to his son, don't take medicines because you will get addicted to them. Right? You will become dependent on them. You'll end up using all of your money. Shabbos said, this is incredible. Rav saying to his son, don't take drugs if you don't need to. In other words, if there's another way to heal yourself without having to rely on drugs, then don't use the drugs because they're addictive. They're addictive. Well, if they're addictive, you'll blow through all of your money and chas v'shalom waste a lot more than just your money. Both say this is such an incredible Gemara. First of all, it's an incredible Gemara because it tells you that the dynamic of the human condition doesn't change all that much, which is incredible. Both say the other piece that's incredibly important about this is that Rav was having a conversation with his child. So often we think that our children know what's right and what's wrong. They just know. The children know, don't take drugs. I'll say, your children know not to take drugs if you tell them not to take drugs. And they might go ahead and roll their eyes at you, when you have that conversation. But it is an incredibly important thing in life for a parent to articulate to a child what is right and what is wrong. So if you have Rav sitting down with his son and telling his son, don't take drugs, then I will say, al achas kamo v'kamo, how we must have that conversation with our children as well. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, "V'lo tashver nigra, v'lo ta'aker kacha, v'lo tikna b'chivyas." We'll say, look at the Rashbam for just a moment. "Lo tashver nigra, psia gas shnatas." So we'll say with this. So the Rashbam says what it literally means is don't jump over a brook or don't jump over a stream. The Rashbam says really what it means is don't take large steps. Taking large steps is a sign of arrogance. So don't walk in an arrogant way. And next, this is very interesting. Don't go ahead and don't pull out teeth. Don't pull out. Our dental union is not represented today. I don't know where they went, right? But maybe text. Where is Jacob and Dovi? Mamish. All right, okay. They could have gotten what are they called? CME credits for this. But all right, good. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, don't go ahead and pull out a tooth. Now, interestingly enough, the reason the Gemara is saying don't pull out a tooth, they'll say akar kacha, is because because it'll be healed in the end. Now, again, I will say, whenever it comes to matters of medicine, so remember again, Chazal are reflecting whatever was known at the time. So I guess conventional wisdom was, which I guess the logic also was maybe you put yourself in greater danger by having an exposed abscess than you did by having a toothache. I don't know, whatever it is. So the Gemara says over here, don't go ahead and pull up a tooth. So also this is very interesting. Don't go ahead and incite an Aramean. Don't start up with an Aramean. Okay, so we'll say along these lines, the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, don't start up with a snake. Don't start up with an Aramean. We'll say first wide line, Kuf Yud Gimel Lamed Aleph. Turn Rabbanon. Gimel in Miskaneben. We'll say there are three things. Miskana literally means incite. What it means is there are three things you should not start up with. These are them. Nachri, a Gentile. Katan, a child. V'nachash. Nachri Katan, Nachash Katan, Talmud Katan. Sorry about that. Right? A young Gentile, right? A young snake and a young Talmud. My time. What's the reason? The Malchusayu Achore Udnaihu Koi. Literally means their monarchy is behind their ears. So we'll say, what does it mean? It means sometimes when you start up with someone or something young, you think you have the advantage. And although you may have the momentary advantage, an interesting thing happens with people or things who are young, which is they get old. And when they get old, they may have power and prominence. So be careful. Be very careful who you choose to go ahead and start up with. Rav La'Ivo Berei. So we'll say, this is an incredible Gemara. Rav said to Ivo, his son, so I just want to point out, so Rav, beforehand we saw that Rav had a conversation with Chia, his son, don't take drugs. Now Rav is talking to his son Ivo, and this is incredible. And he says, Tarchi b'cha b'shmaisa v'lo mistaya milsa. I've tried teaching you Torah, but it hasn't worked out. Rav is saying to his son Ivo, you don't seem to be taking to learning. So ta agmarach mili da'alma. So let me teach you worldly matters. Let me teach you worldly matters. And I will say, this is very interesting on a couple of levels. First, I will say, it's quite interesting to see how Rav relates to each of his children differently. Right? This is the Chanuch L'Nar Al Pi Darko idea. Person could be blessed with many children, but every parent knows no child is the same as the other. As much as sometimes a parent has a desire, even sometimes subconscious desire, to make their children a particular mold, children very quickly defy any type of mold. And it's the job of a parent to understand the individualistic nature of their children. So it's fascinating over here that Rav is saying, bless you, Rav is saying to Ivo, his son, it's not working. It's not working to learn, right? I'm teaching you Torah. You don't seem to be taking to it. So let me teach you worldly matters. So we'll say there are two ways you can understand this. So number one, it could be that Rav is saying to Ivo, listen, you're not going to sit in the Beis Midrash. Okay, that's all right. You're not going to be successful in this way. Let's cultivate your success in a different way. Which Rabbi say is so incredibly important, because what it says is sometimes we're so desperate to have our children succeed in a particular way that we push and we push and we push. And even as they say, when it's lo oleh, when it's not working, we still push harder. And the job of a parent is to realize, okay, your child is not an extension of you, right? Your child is not your way to fulfill your unrealized dreams. If it's not working in a particular direction, redirect. Of course, Rav wants his sons to be incredible Talmidei Chachamim, but it's not going. So Rav says, okay, let's go in a different direction. Let's see your success in a different way. But we'll say that Ben Yehoyada points out and says, that's not what Rav was saying to his son. This is incredible. Rav was saying to his son, when we sit and we learn Bechavrus in the Beis Midrash, you're not taking to it, for whatever the reason. Let me teach you Torah through real life examples. See, I will say, people learn Torah in different ways. Some people learn Torah like we're learning from a block Gemara. Other people learn Torah by observing and ingesting the lessons of life. Rav was saying to his son, Ivo, I've tried teaching you Torah in the conventional way. It's not going. It's not working. So let me teach you Torah, ultimately, again, through showing you the importance and the wisdom of life lessons, world lessons. Again, I'm going to send it out a little bit later on in the chat. The Ben Yehoyada extrapolates the spiritual lessons in each of these mundane statements. But here we go. So the Gemara says this. But the Pashat Pshat, here's the Pashat Pshat. The Pashat Pshat was that Rav was saying to his son, you're not going to sit in the Beis Midrash. So let's make sure that you become a successful businessman. Right, let me give you some life lessons that will give you success in life. Number one, before, while they still stand on your feet, sell your merchandise. Sell fast. Whatever you bring back, sell it quickly. Sometimes when you sell something, you could have remorse. Let's say you sell an item, and then what happens? The item goes up in value. And you're like, had I just held it a little bit longer, I could have even made more money. You could have remorse with everything else in life except wine. Why? Because wine turns, right? Wine sours. So it's in your best interest to go ahead and sell the wine quickly. So the Gemara goes, Shari kiseich upasach sakech. Make sure you go ahead, literally means open your pocket and then go ahead, or I should say close your pocket and then open your sack, which means that whenever you're selling something, get the money up front. Get the money up front, right? So have the money in your pocket and then you could open up the sack. The sack represents what you have your goods in. Kava me'ara v'lo kura me'igra. We'll say this is incredible. Better to get a kav, which is a small measurement of earth that is in front of you, more than a kur, which is a larger measurement from the roof on top of you. In other words, better to make less money, but not have to travel, than to make more money by traveling. Which I will say again, intuitively, there is a certain wear and tear, right, and a certain sunk cost that happens both with oneself and one's family when one has to travel. So better to go ahead and make less money but not have to travel than to go ahead and make more money and travel. Tamra bichiluzak lebe sugna rahit. When you have dates, so if you look at the Rashbam says over here, Tamra bichiluzak lebe sadna rahit. So it means literally again, if you have dates in your utensil, run to the brewer. In other words, remember again, in Babel especially, they drink date beer. So what it's saying is, once you have dates, go run to the brewer and go make it into beer. Va'ad kama. So what's the minimum amount of dates you have to make it worth your while, a trip to the brewer? Ad tlo sa'a, 3 sa'a. Amra Papa. Papa says, Ilo diramai shichra lo yasri. Papa said, if I would not have brewed beer, I would not have become rich. Interesting. So Papa was rich, not from Torah, right? He was rich ultimately again because he had a side business of brewing beer. Others say it wasn't Rav Dov, it was Rav Chisda. If I did not brew beer, I wouldn't be rich. My sudna. So was it interestingly enough, why is a beer brewer, called a sudna? Rav Chisda sod noeh ugemilos chasadim. Because being a beer brewer, sod na'eh. So we'll say it's a nice little secret. Rashi says over here, the Rashbam says, Eitza tova hi shari mis ashemena. Sod na'eh means it's a good secret. In other words, people don't realize you can make a good parnasa from being a date brewer, and ultimately, again, gemilas chasadim. So we'll say there are different ways of understanding this idea. So the Marshal says, Pasha Pshat is that if you have money, you could do chesed. I will say, what is the point of having money? Why does a Jew have wealth? So at the end of the day, yes, of course, I could use my wealth for my own comfort as well. But lamaisa, wealth is from the Ribono Shel Olam, and if it's given to you, Emir Tashamai, all of us, it's given to you to do chesed, to do good for other people. So again, therefore, becoming wealthy represents an incredible opportunity, both for one's physical comfort, which is great, but also to be able to do incredible chesed. Amra Papa, Kol Agov Gevia Boy. So look at the Rashbam for just a moment. The Rashbam says over here, Kol Agav Gevia Boy, Kol Davar Shetzarach Lichtov Shtaralav Kigon Milva Va'amana Gavya Kilomar Adayin Hitzarach Ligbos Yeshua Torach. So Papa says, literally, anything for which you have a document still requires collection. So also what Rav Papa was saying is, just because you have a document, do not count the debt as collected, right? Nothing is collected until it's collected, which I will say is an incredible yesod by business, right? Don't think of your accounts receivable ultimately again as money in the bank, which is an incredible yesod, and also in life. Only go ahead and count your accomplishments once they're actually accomplished. So the Gemara goes right there. Kol ashrei, safek asi, safek lo asi. V'da asi ma'os ra'os. And Rabbi says very interesting. In anything that you extend on credit, just know any credit, it's a safek if you're ever going to collect it. And if you do collect it, it's going to be bad coins. Well, I'll say, why bad coins? The Rashbam points out over here, it could mean that it's going to be paid in an inferior currency, but the Rashbam means, it means that people, when they pay off credit, or when they buy something on credit, sometimes they only pay off a little bit at a time. So from a business perspective, from a collections perspective, getting in a little bit of money at a time is detrimental to one's business operation. Okay, we'll say interesting, just to point out something incredible. So we'll say, whether you go with the Ben Yehoyada's idea that in each of these lessons there is some deep spiritual, metaphysical lesson as well, or just to see, we'll say that in general in life, the way to be successful in life, whether it's in your learning or it's in your business, is to do things b'chachma, to do things with wisdom, that a person has to have a seder, a person has to have an order in life. And if you don't have order, everything falls apart. So you see over here, the wisdom of Chazal, even in business practices, there has to be a seder, there has to be an order. Good. The Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Gimel Dvarim Amra B'Yochanan Mishram Anshi Yerushalayim. So we'll say, this is very interesting. So Rabbi Yochanan said, three things in the name of people of Yerushalayim. Kesha'ata yotzi le'melchama. When you go out to war, al teitze berishona, don't go out first, ela teitze ba'achrona. Rather, go out last. Why? Kedei shetikhanis berishona. In order, ultimately, again, that when you have to retreat, you're the first one who's able to escape. Now, I will say, when you look at this statement, what a strange statement to say, right? This is good morale, right? Yeah. Who wants to be last, right? So first of all, say you can't even run an army like this, right? If the conventional wisdom is that you should always go out to war last. Let's say if you have to retreat. So we'll say perhaps the pshat is like this. Perhaps the message is not for physical war, but it's for spiritual war. That at the end of the day, this goes back to what we saw last week. Remember again, I will say the Gemara said if you're walking down the road and you see two women on two sides of the road facing each other, what are they doing? Kishuf. So what did the Gemara say? What should you do? Dircha achrina. Find a different road. Sometimes the best way to deal with spiritual challenges is avoidance. If I know that something is a trigger, if I know that something is a nisayon, don't place yourself b'makom nisayon. Don't place yourself b'makom milchama. See, I will say in general, avoidance is not the way to deal with your challenges. But when it comes to areas of spirituality in which I've been tested and I've failed, when it comes to averos, which I know are my Achilles heel, the goal is not to place yourself right on the front lines of the conflict. The idea sometimes in life is avoidance. So find a different road. So perhaps the Gemara is saying over here is as follows. Anshe Yishalayim lav dafka, that they're talking about over here. They're talking about over here about physical war, about actual warfare, because this is not a good eitzah for war. But Lamaisa, what they're saying is, when it comes to the war, the ultimate war, the war most of us wage each and every day, which is the war against the Yetzer Hara, it's only a last resort to go out to war. You don't do battle, right? Instead, the best way to approach things is avoidance. Don't tempt the Yetzer Hara. Don't wake the sleeping giant. Do your best to sidestep any conflict with the Yetzer Hara. Do your best to avoid the triggers. Going out in direct conflict, in full frontal combat, that's only a last resort. So go last. And the reason you go last is because this way, if you have to retreat, it's much easier to retreat than when you engage in full contact, full battle. An incredible yisod, I will say. So the Gemara goes weiter. I'm sorry. This is interesting. So you see, it's not just Rabbi Akiva who said this, which is interesting. Although yesterday was attributed to Rabbi Akiva, today we see that this was something that was said by the people of Yishan, and maybe they got it from Rabbi Akiva as well. So make your Shabbos into a weekday and do not rely on people. So remember, we saw that piece yesterday. That was a din. Means be independent. Be independent. Better to go ahead and make your Shabbos into a weekday than have to rely on other people. I'll say all of us know this, because anytime we have to rely on people, it's not a comfortable feeling. The best thing in life that a person could have is self-reliance, is independence, is not have to be beholden to the other. So the Gemara goes weiter. And go ahead and make sure to get into business with someone who is having a good run. I will say this is also, we saw this yesterday. If somebody is having good Muslim business, get into a partnership with them. Three things that Rabbi Shimon Levi said in the name of the great men of Yerushalayim. Number one, al tarbe beganos. Don't spend a lot of time walking in gardens. So we'll say, so the Rashbam says what this means is, make sure that when you go ahead and you engage in private things, do so in private areas. Because of the episode that occurred. So what does this mean? The gan represents a public place. Don't do private things in public places. The Gemara is making a reference over here to the episode of David and Batsheva. Remembering, and Batsheva was bathing on her rooftop. David HaMelech was walking on his rooftop, and he saw her. And because he saw her, he desired her, and that led to a whole series of terrible events. So ultimately, again, the Gemara is saying, better to keep your private activities in private places. Bitcha bagra, this is interesting. Once your daughter becomes a bogeres, so meaning, remember, it was a marriageable age. In the eyes of Chazal, once a girl became a bogeres, she was ready to get married. Bogeres is 12 and a half years old. So once the girl reaches bagrus, get her married off. Get her married off as quickly as possible to the point of shichrer avducha v'seinla. Even if you can't find the shidduch, so emancipate your Eved Kanani. Once you emancipate your Eved Kanani, he becomes a full-fledged Jew, and marry your daughter off to him. Be careful with your wife and your first son-in-law. My time, what's the reason? Rav Chisda said because sometimes an unhealthy relationship could develop between the two. Rav Kahana Mishum Mammon, because sometimes again a wife could end up spending all of the money, all of the husband's money on her son-in-law. So the Gemara says Havaha Isnu, and both are concerned. But you have to understand something also. Remember, Bismana Gemara, it was very common also for a newly married couple to live with the wife's parents for an extended period of time. So the Gemara just says unhealthy relationships could potentially develop. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Shlosha minochali olam haba. I'll say this is beautiful. There are three people who inherit the world to come. Well, isn't that beautiful, this Gemara is? Eluhain, Hadar be'eretz Yisrael. One who lives in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi say minochali olam haba. Incredible. Of course, again, we say every single day, V'solichinu kamamios liartzenu. We ask Hashem to bring us back to Eretz Yisrael standing upright, right? The goal is not just to be buried in Eretz Yisrael, but the goal is to go into Eretz Yisrael standing upright. You live in Eretz Yisrael, Kaldar Eretz Yisrael, Minochale ha'olam haba. You inherit the world to come. V'amagadol bonav l'talmud Torah, and one who goes ahead and raises his children to learn Torah. So we'll say this is also an incredible yisod. If you raise your children, I will say, so many times it's interesting. Yeah, it's always interesting to kind of hear like parents' aspirations for their children. Like, what do I want for my child? So the Gemara says, what I want for my child is Lilmod Torah, L'Talmud Torah. Now, Megad Laban of L'Talmud Torah means that my child is machshiv learning, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that my child is always occupied with learning. Of course, as we've seen before, also having a profession. I just want to point out, it's clear Rav Papa was a brewer, right? And became very successful in his brewery also. So it's clear that having a profession is not the steer to becoming a great Talmud Chacham. But Hamagadol Ban of L'Talmud Torah means I raise children who are machshiv Torah. I raise children who understand that Torah is important and Torah is an essential part of their lives. And lastly, v'hamavdil al hayayin b'matzei shabbos. This is very interesting. And so the first two I understand, right? Living in Eretz Yisrael, raising my children for Torah. Number 3 is very interesting. One who goes ahead and makes havdalah on wine. One who makes havdalah on wine is nochali olam haba. So the Gemara says, Mahi. So what does that mean? Dimishayer mikidusha la'avdalta. That's a person ultimately, again, who leaves over wine on Shabbos for Avdallah. Rashbam points out, that's a person who during his Su'udah, even though he's enjoying some good wine, is careful to leave over wine. Not consume all of his wine during the Su'udah, but to leave over some wine for Avdallah. So we'll say, the first way I understand, living in Eretz Yisrael, self-explanatory. Raising one's children for Talmud Torah, self-explanatory. What's the meaning of the third one? First of all, this is great news, because like the first two, I don't know, I'm going to get to Eretz Yisrael, children for Talmud Torah. This last one, this is in the bag, right? This one I could do. Leave over wine for Abdullah. So we'll say, what's the pshat? Well, what does it mean? It means that a person has wine by their Shabbos Suda, and I have a choice. I can enjoy it now all for myself, or I can leave it for some higher purpose. A person who leaves over some wine for some higher purpose is a person who recognizes that his gashmius is not there to just simply satisfy his physical urges, but his gashmius is there for my ruchnius. See, I both say this is the secret of Yiddishkeit, and this is why we're not an ascetic religion. Gashmius is beautiful if it's used to facilitate ruchnius. If gashmius becomes an ends, right? If it's all about the pursuit of the material, then that's when Gashmius becomes the ultimate divide between ourselves and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if Gashmius is used to facilitate Ruchnius, then not only is it okay, but I'm infusing Kedusha into the material. So a person who's sitting at the Shabbos Suda, and I have the choice right now to enjoy another glass of wine with my chalent, or to save the glass of wine for Avdallah, and I make the conscious decision to save the glass of wine for Avdallah, the statement I'm making is, my Gashmius is here to facilitate my Ruchnius. Oh, you live a life where your Gashmius facilitates your Ruchnius. That's minochale olam haba. That's a person who inherits all haba. I must say, this is the key to successful living. Why do I have my material things in life? If my material things are just to make me happy, just to give me comfort, then I'm selling my gashmius short. But if my gashmius, I must say, this is the key in life. If I could point to every aspect of my gashmius and point out how this gashmi things facilitates ruchnius, then says the Gemara, that's minochale olam haba. Incredible. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. But let's listen to this. There are 3 things, or 3 people that HaKadosh Baruch Hu announces on every day. When we say announce, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm so proud of you. 3 people that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm so proud of you every day. Who are they? Number one, Al Ravak Hadar Bekrach Ve'ino Chote, a single man who lives in a large city and doesn't sin. As I was saying, in a city, if you're a single guy, there's a lot of opportunities for sin. This doesn't apply in Baltimore. This applies where places are open past 9 o'clock at night, right? Otherwise, again, so if you're a single man and you live in a city and there's a lot of opportunities for sin and you don't sin, the Ribono Shel Olam says how proud he is of you every single day. Next, the Gemara says, a poor person who finds a lost object and returns it to its owners. Because let's remember again, a poor person who finds, let's say, money or an object of value would have such a Yetzer Hara to keep. And understandably so, if he goes out of his way to do a Shabbos Aveda, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm so proud of you. And a rich person who tithes his produce in private. See, I will say, if you're a rich person, tithing in public was a big thing. Why? Because people could see how much money you have. So a rich person who tithes in private, so again, he's not flaunting his wealth. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm so proud of you. Rav Safra, Rava Kadar Krachas. Listen to this. Rav Safra was an older single guy who was living in a city, Abba Beis. Tani Tana Kamei de Rava. So the Tana taught this ruling in front of Rava, namely that a single man who lives in a large city, ultimately again, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu says how proud he is of that individual. So Tzavu upon Rav Safra, Rav Safra began to beam. His face became radiant. So what it means is Rav Safra was very happy with himself because again, this is an absolutely incredible thing. Amar le Rava, so listen to this. So Rava says, Lav kigon mar. Rava says, no, calm down. It's not like someone like you. I think you just have to shut up. I think the fan is on. I think that's what it is. So he says, Lav kigon mar. He says, no, not like you, Rav Safra. Ele kigon Rav Chanina Rosha. So listen to this. Who does it refer to? It refers to people like Rav Chanina and Rav Oshia. Listen to this, Rav say this is wild. Dahava ushchapi ba'arad Yisrael. So we'll say Rav Chanina and Rav Oshia were shoemakers, cobblers in Eretz Yisrael. But I just want to point out, it's always amazing to me how you see these great Tanam and Amoraim who had professions. We'll say it's very important. It goes both ways. On one hand, it says, a person who says that I could only learn and not work, it's not true. You see people, again, who Baruch Hashem were able to work and to learn. But we'll say the other way, the cuts the other way also, that even if I say, I work, that's not an excuse not to be a Talmid Chacham. Even if a person has a profession, a person has a demanding profession, everybody has an obligation to try to become a Talmid Chacham. So the Gemara says this, Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Oshia were shoemakers in Eretz Yisrael. Watch this. And they will say, where was their shop? This is incredible. Their shop was in the red light district, right? Their shop was in the shuk of the Zonos. And again, they had a niche market. Their niche market was they made shoes for harlots. So when the harlots would come in, so the harlots would look at the Rabbanim. These two Rabbanim, Rab Chanina and Rab Oshia, would never look upon these women. They would go out and make them shoes, right? They would make them shoes, but they would not look at them. Listen to this, this is incredible. This is incredible. And the harlots had such respect for these men, Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Oshia, that when the harlots wanted to swear about something, they would swear by the lives of the great rabbis of Israel. Let's say, so who are the great rabbis of Israel? Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Oshia. So the point of Moshe is that here you have two men, now presumably they were married, but two men they were encountering these women, and presumably would have had much opportunity to sin, but yet did not do so. So that's what it means to have incredible, about these type of people, HaKadosh Baruch Hu cries out and says, I'm so proud of you each and every day. So the Gemara goes right there. The Gemara says, Shlosha HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oavan. We'll say, this is so beautiful. Three people the Ribbon Shalom loves, who are the Misha Inokois. Somebody doesn't get angry. We just spoke about this on Shabbos. Right? This was the drasha. Right? So again, somebody who doesn't get angry, somebody who controls their temper. It is so easy to get angry at any given number of things each and every day. And a person who controls his temper, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves them. So the Gemara says, someone who doesn't get drunk. So we'll say, by the way, what's coming around between anger and drunkenness? It's a certain inner equilibrium. A person who is able to moderate themselves. That's what it is. Anger is, I lose self-control. Drunkenness is, I lose self-control. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu love more than anything in life? Moderation. Because moderation is the key to success. Finding the middle path. Finding the middle ground. Finding the derech hamamut, as the Rambam calls it, is the secret to success. And lastly, umisheino mamid amidosra. We'll say this is incredible. And someone who literally again yields, right? Someone who is a forgiving individual. Eino mamid amidosra means someone who's mevater. That we'll say there are a lot of times in life that I have a right to get angry, or I have a right to be offended, or I have a right to be upset. If I am able to transcend those things, and ultimately be a yielding and forgiving individual, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves such a person like that. And I'll say, but I just want to point out, I wish I had more time, but isn't it incredible? I'll say, you would say, who does HaKadosh Baruch Hu love? Someone who finishes Daf Yomi in 7.5 years, right? That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu love. Someone who gives all of his money to tzedakah. But I'll say, who does HaKadosh Baruch Hu love? Someone who doesn't get angry, someone who doesn't get drunk, and someone who is able to go ahead and be ma'avir al midos. Rabbi say, isn't that incredible? Or stated a little bit differently, who does HaKadosh Baruch Hu love? People who try to be good. People who try to be good. People who try to find a moderate middle ground. That's who the Ribono Shel Olam loves. Rabbi say, such an incredible thing. Sometimes we think it takes so much to earn divine love, but it actually doesn't take as much as we think it does. Incredible. Furthermore, Shlosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sonan. 3 people HaKadosh Baruch Hu despises. Who does he despise? Hamedaber echad b'peh echad b'leiv. So Rabbi says, makes a lot of sense. People who are disingenuous. So people who say one thing, but feel something different. Vayodeh idus bechavero ve'eno meyedlo, or someone who knows testimony for his friend and he doesn't testify. In other words, which means what? If you have the ability to help someone, but you don't do so, you have the ability to help someone. You know idus of someone, but you don't do so. Because Baruch Hu doesn't like such an individual. And if you see some matter of immorality in your friend and you testify, but you are an Eid Echad. You're one witness. Remember again, what do you accomplish when you show up to Beis Din and you're one witness? What do you accomplish? Nothing. The only thing you do is you impugn the person's reputation. So we'll say, isn't this incredible? It does. It's just so amazing. You think, who does HaKadosh Baruch Hu hate? I don't know. Mechalel Shabbos and Oved Avodah Zarah. There's so many great kind of things to hate. Who does HaKadosh Baruch Hu hate? Who does he hate? He hates someone who's echad b'peh echad b'leiv. If you're disingenuous, he hates someone ultimately again who is able to go and help out someone else through giving testimony, but he doesn't do so. He hates someone who impugns the reputation of another unnecessarily. Listen to this, I will say. This is a great story. I mean, it's not a great story, but you'll see. A guy named Tovia once sinned, and he sinned in a matter of immorality. Va'asa zigud. And Zigud came along, a guy named Zigud, came and he testified that he saw Tovia engaged in a matter of immorality. And he came before Rav Papa, he was a single witness. And what happened? Nagde leZigud. So Rav Papa went ahead and flogged Zigud. So just to be clear, Zigud is the guy who gave the testimony. Amarle, Tovia chavta v'Zigud mingid. So Zigud was a bit surprised. Tovia sinned, but Zigud gets the malchus. Amarle in dechsiv lo yakom eid echad beish va'at l'chudach asadis bei shemra ba'alma kamafis bei. Yes, Zigud, because Torah says you don't come as one witness. The only thing you've accomplished when you came along was to impugn the reputation of Tovia. So yes, you're going to get the malchus. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak Amarav mutar l'sinoso. But this is actually quite fascinating. Well, in the 2 minutes we have left, we'll just get into this. So the Gemara says, it is permitted to hate someone, ultimately, again, who you see commit a matter of arayos. So if you look at Rashi, Haroi Yechidi Divar Erva. If one sees an individual who engaged in a matter of immorality, so we'll say this is really quite a fascinating sugya. If you see someone engage in an act of immorality, see, even though, again, lemaisa, you can't testify about them, you could hate them. Now we'll say, what exactly it means that you could hate someone and the ramifications of that, we're going to have to see. Let's just do another minute and we'll have to stop. So it says, because the pasuk says, if you see the donkey of your friend literally buckling underneath its load, my sone. So who's your enemy? So if you say it's a Gentile enemy, but the Chazal said the sone mentioned in the pasuk is a Jew. Velo sone nachri. But rather, again, it's clear that the person you're despising is a Jew. But are you permitted to despise another Jew? The pasuk says you cannot hate your brother in your heart. Rather, what's the case? If there are witnesses that the particular Jew committed an aveira, then everyone else will also hate him. My sone, hi, elalav ki agavna dechazye ba ihu devar erva. Rather, the Gemara says it must be that what's the case? The case is where I saw Reuven commit an act of immorality, but I'm only one person. So it's not enough to go to Beis Din. So even though, again, I can't go to Beis Din, not only is it not enough, I can't go to Beis Din, because at the end of the day, all I'm going to do is impugn his reputation, but yet, there is a mitzvah to despise such an individual whom you have seen engage in an act of immorality. So we'll say, so again, we'll have to stop over here for today, but we'll pick up tomorrow. We're going to say, we'll say, this, I want to tell you something, this is very troublesome, because in general, the notion of hating someone is a very powerful and caustic emotion. But also, I'll say, what it also is that practically speaking, what does it mean? And what does it mean to say there's a mitzvah to hate someone? Is there a mitzvah to hate someone? So we'll say, Emir Hashem, to be continued tomorrow. Shkach.